Boom. Welcome in to a new episode of the Fit Parent Podcast. We are finally moving into the next phase. I guess we finished the fat loss hierarchy. We did a couple of other episodes, which I really enjoyed. Those are two maybe of my favorites that we did the last two. But as promised, we're going to get into kind of the fat loss hierarchy part two. There's the building blocks of fat loss that we talked about, episodes 1 through 7 on those parts, which are, if you haven't listened to those are the mechanics for fat loss. But then there are kind of soft skills that you don't necessarily, these aren't necessarily the things that are going to drive it, are not part of the fat loss equation, so to speak, but certainly make it significantly easier to do it. These are the kind of the soft skills that allow you to do it. And I call them, it's really 4 S's, but we already talked about sleep as part of it. So there's 3 remaining, the 3 S's that we're going to talk about. Today we'll dive into the first one. Amy is with me again today.
Hello.
So I'm going to be diving in. I'm excited to hear her thoughts on this first one as well, because this, I think, is a big thing for you as well. So want to start with this. Fish swim well in water.
That's accurate.
All right. Fish move well in water. Right. They do not move very well out of water.
It's true.
The environment that we put ourselves in, the things that surround us, make it easier or harder for us to do what it is that we're trying to do. And so when it comes to the mechanics of fat loss, the hierarchy that we talked about, those 7 things, if you do those 7 things, you will lose fat. If you even do the top 5, you will lose fat. If you do all 7, you're well on your way. These things are the things that make those things significantly easier to do, for you to do those things well and to do them long enough for the final S, which is sustainability, which is the idea behind sustainability when it comes to fat loss or just anything in general. And this is maybe another topic that we'll talk about, but I'm going to touch on it briefly here. People get into the idea of a sustainable diet. There's no such thing as a sustainable diet. That's an oxymoron. Diets are meant to be short term to some degree. And if you're talking about like a calorie deficit trying to lose fat, right? You are not meant to be in a calorie deficit perpetually, forever. It's not good for you. And it's not the goal either. Like, that's not fun. The goal is to get to be able to maintain, have a little bit more freedom, or try a different goal. Maybe try to get into a little bit of a surplus and put on some muscle and do different things like that. You have so inherently a calorie deficit is meant to be short term. However, there are 2 components to that. One, you need to be able to sustain it long enough to see results based on the timeline that we've talked about, which is, if you're losing half a pound to 2 pounds a week, usually it's about 3/4 to a pound if you're in a pretty consistent calorie deficit that we talked about. Do the math on that, right? If you have 20 pounds to lose, you're probably looking at 20 to 26, 30 weeks. So you're talking 4 to 8 months. If you have more, so like you need to be able to do this long enough to see those results. And maybe you don't do it all at once. Maybe you do 3 months and then you give yourself a little bit of a break and go up to maintenance and then go back to it. There's different strategies for doing it, but you need to be able to sustain the things that you're doing long enough to stack the wins and see the results that you're looking for. That's one piece of it. The other piece of sustainability is, and we talked about this at the very end of the fat loss hierarchy, numbers 2 through 7 you will do for the rest of your life, regardless of your goal, right? You will need to eat protein. You will need to eat fiber. You will need to prioritize your sleep and walk and strength train and do cardio. All of those things are part of being healthy and taking care of your body. They're part of a weight maintenance plan. They're part of a muscle gaining plan. All of those things are true. The only thing that differs, depending on your goal, is the total number of calories. Number one, are you in a calorie deficit? Are you maintaining, or are you above it? You're going to still be trying to prioritize mostly whole, less processed foods because it allows you to eat more food, but you're going to still give yourself freedom to enjoy the things that you love. All of that is true all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about the habits piece of this, the things that you're doing, the building blocks of your overall healthy eating. That is sustainable forever. That's sustainable nutrition. The thing that needs to be sustainable within that, if you have a fat loss goal, is you need to be able to be in your deficit long enough to see the results that you're looking for. And some of those components certainly make staying in a deficit easier. And we talked about how protein does, and fiber, and sleep, and walking, and strength training, and cardio all contribute to either directly to being in a calorie deficit or making it easier to stay in a calorie deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all there to support that. These are other ways to support that. And these are also things that are about sustainability long term as well, but particularly important when it comes to fat loss and something that is inherently short term and is difficult. When things are difficult, we want to try to make them as easy as we can via the systems that we set up around ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, the 3 S's remaining are support, strategy, and stress management. I think I flipped the order that we're going to do those in for the last 2. So we're going to do support today. We'll do stress management next week, and we will do strategy for the week after. And I think that these are all relevant, as these are going to be coming out the first 3 weeks of the new year as people are trying to make plans. These are things that if you put these in place, these are good places to start, because it will make it, as you're making all of the changes that we talked about in parts 1 through 7, it will make those changes significantly easier, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't do all of those changes all at once. That's not sustainable. But you can make some of these changes fairly quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and it will make those things significantly easier. So you're basically, these 3 S's are putting yourself as a fish in water to make it easier for you to swim. That's where I started.
To just keep swimming?
Just to keep swimming. There we go.
Yeah.
Didn't actually think about that, but that was a really good good connection. I don't know how I didn't think about that.
This is why you have me here.
This is why
I'm here for comic relief and the occasional very good idea.
That was a great idea.
Thank
So
you.
today we're talking about support. And so I think I've talked about this. I think I talked about this in the point A to point B episode, but I'm going to talk about it again today because it is the kind of blueprint for what does support look like, because people get support wrong all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The common word that people use when they talk about support is accountability, and people mess up accountability. They don't know what they're talking about with accountability. Accountability is like, you have in our heads, it's like, oh, I need somebody to hold me accountable. And so then you think of like somebody who's checking in with you, nagging you all the time. Like, did you do this thing? Right. Or the idea of accountability is like somebody's, expecting me, and what are they going to do? They're going to berate me if I don't do it. Like, I'm going to,
Yeah.
That's not, accountability is about positive versus negative. Like, effective accountability is about pushing you to do what you can do, not berating you for the things that you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to come back to that in a minute. So, but that's kind of the overarching thing. So I've told this, I've given this analogy before, but I think it's the best one that I can think of. And I'll give another one as well. When you climb Mount Everest, I've told this story on the podcast before, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great analogy, though.
When you climb Mount Everest, if you've never climbed, if you climb Mount Everest, you have a Sherpa guide to hike with you. These are people who live on the mountain, who hike it all the time, who know where to go, where not to go, when to stop, when to keep going, when to push through, what to avoid, and what definitely to do. These are people who know how to get to the top, who've done it tons of times before, and it's their job to help guide you up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it by yourself. The very first people to climb, whatever, Sir Edmund Hillary, right, didn't have a Sherpa to climb. He climbed it his own dang self, right? So you can do it, but a lot of people before him died trying.
Yep.
Okay, because it's very difficult to do when you don't have it, right? This is the idea of like, I've tried to do it by myself and I keep running into roadblocks, or I tried something and it didn't work and I got frustrated, or I'm feeling discouraged, so I stop, but I really should have kept going, or I pushed through and I probably should have taken a break, right? This is where having somebody with experience helps you. That's the role of a coach. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. Then there's also, you often don't go one-on-one with a Sherpa. You often are with other people who are climbing the mountain for the first time with you, who can celebrate the victories, experience the wins and the cool moments with you for the first time. You all summit the mountain together for the first time and see the view, and it's like, holy cow, we made it. These are also the people that commiserate with you and can empathize with you in the struggle even more than the Sherpa can, because they're currently doing it with you.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard, isn't it? This is cold. I don't know if this was worth it.
Feels like a bad idea.
This feels like a horrible decision. And I have a friend in the industry. I'll leave her name out of it. But she would probably be fine with me sharing it. But I haven't talked to her, so I don't want to out her without talking to her ahead of time. But she climbed. Oh gosh, it's in South America, but it's like, it's not the highest. So Mount Everest is the highest, mountain,
Elevation.
but this is like highest relative to the equator, like the furthest from the center of the earth, I think is really what it is. So because Mount Everest is near the equator, it's but the earth is, I'm not going to get into this. It's a tall mountain. It's like a Everest adjacent. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I don't know the name of the mountain, but it's very, very tall mountain. It's like Everest adjacent, and fewer people have climbed it than Everest. It's in South America. I probably should have gotten the name of this thing from her beforehand and checked with her, but I forgot to. So go me. But she climbed this and she had this experience, and she came back, and I met with, I connected with her. It was probably 3-4 weeks after she got back. And the relationships that she formed with her crew, who she met for the very first time, like 3 days before this climb, like you get there to base camp and she met them. Those people are relationships where she's like, I've already gone to see them in their homes all around the country multiple times since then. Like I've flown around the country to see these people because of that level of connection that you build with them, because you're in it together. Another example of this, and it uses the coach analogy, but I coached high school football for a long time. It was, even while I was in college, I was kind of assistant coaching. And then when I got my first teaching job, I started coaching, and I worked in my 5 years of teaching. My last year coaching, I was the offensive coordinator and associate head coach of this high school program that I was part of, which was great. It was fantastic. And I loved doing that. It was actually something that I thought about pursuing, like coaching as a career. And then I realized that I was maybe a little bit old to start that because the way that the coaching rank works, like in college football, you basically make like $3,000 to work 90 hours a week during the season. And then you have to move every year for like 7 years until you get a real job. And so if you're 22 and you can sleep on a friend's couch and you have no life, like, yeah, you can
Yeah.
do that. But when I was 27 and married and we were thinking about kids, I was like, this might not be the life that I'm going to dive into right now. But it was also the thing that sparked me into coaching this way, in this context. But I played football in high school. I coached football throughout the thing. And there's no sport in the world where a coach is more involved than in football. That doesn't mean that there aren't, it's not important. Like basketball is there for sure. But at the end of the day, like I called every single play that we ran, like every single play at the NFL level. Right. These guys are professionals. Like every now and then the quarterback will call some of the stuff, but for the most part, the coach is calling it. The coach is making decisions. Right. So you have somebody who kind of can see the bigger picture of what's happening and is playing chess, not checkers in the ice. Like I'm seeing 3/4 down the road. We're going to run this play now because it's going to set us up to run this play later on in the game. Right. I'm noticing what they're doing. So we're going to counter with this. That's what a coach is doing. I know that we need to go here. We're not going to go there. Right. I come in with the game plan on Monday and I say, this is what we're doing this week. This is what I think they're going to do. This is what we're going to do. That's the coach's role, which in football, it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in other sports, but in football, that's the highest extent of it. But the coach doesn't play. You have a team that plays. The team has to execute on the coach's plan. If the team doesn't execute, I had teams where, well, and this is not bashing them, there's 16-year-old kids, but I got a quarterback who like would just get frantic and couldn't see what I was trying to tell him. So I had to like, all right, the plan isn't working for him. You know what I mean? And I had to adjust the plan. But he has to execute on it. So I could have the perfect plan, but if he doesn't execute on it, then it doesn't get done. But it also is the ultimate team sport. And this is my opinion, but I think it's generally backed up in the idea that you could have, there's 11 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense. If I'm on offense, we're running a play, if 10 out of the 11 guys do what they're supposed to do, but the 11th guy misses his job, then the play doesn't work. Like you almost always need all 11 guys to do what they're supposed to do in order for the play to work. And that's relying on each other. And they have to hold each other accountable. The idea is, I don't know if I want to wade into this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So everybody in the world right now knows a little bit more about Travis Kelce and his brother Jason Kelce because Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift. Like that's kind of what's happening. And Travis Kelce is arguably the greatest tight end, which is one of the positions in football, in NFL history. His brother is arguably the best center, another position in NFL history. The two of them have a podcast together, which is enormously popular. Like it's 2 years old and they got 2 million subscribers. It's like top podcasts in the world. And I listen to this podcast because I find that's how I get my sports entertainment, because I can't actually watch football anymore because my children interrupt me, or it's on at 8:30 at night when I want to go to sleep. Yep. So I can't actually really fully sit down and watch a game anymore in my current season of life. So my way of getting sports entertainment, my sports fix, is like talking head podcast things talking about sports. And it is actually sports, which is a little bit sad. At some point, maybe I'll be able to watch sports again, but this is what it is. So they're one of the guys, that I listen to on occasion, and they're still both playing. And so they will talk about their experiences like from the week before. And the thing that they say all the time, particularly after a loss, is, I want to get up and I want to play for the guy next to me. And my accountability is for the guy next to me. I'm going to do my job because the other guy next to me is counting on me to do it. Like I'm doing it for me and I'm doing it for the good of the team, but I'm also doing it because the guy next to me is counting on me to do it. Because if I do my job, it makes it easier for him to do his job, right? That's the idea behind football. Why am I telling these stories? Okay. This is the blueprint for what true support looks like. And then there's one further step to it that we'll get to at the very end. You need somebody who's experienced it before
Mhm.
to go coach, right? Very few, especially not at high school, but even NFL teams don't go coachless, right? Even the best, most talented football team put together, right, just by their own devices, would lose to a mediocre, talented team that was excellently coached, right?
Mhm.
If you took all of the best football players in the world and you put them on the team, but you said there's no coach, and then you took like the next tier down, kind of middle of the pack players, and you gave them the best coaching staff of all time, that team would smoke the best players,
Mhm.
absolutely destroy them, because the coaches know how to exploit the weaknesses because they've seen it before.
Mhm.
They know where to go, where not to go. So you need a coach. You need somebody who's been there before to guide you through that. And there's different
Mhm.
ways that this looks, but that's part of it. And you also need people you're doing it with.
Mhm.
And that looks different for everybody. But both of those play a huge role in your ability to stick with this for the long term. So let's now bring it a little bit closer into a fitness environment. As a for instance, you were just talking about how you're sore from the last
Yes,
couple of days of workouts. So we did
with my
yesterday
zero of a coach.
in the we did yesterday. It was our last glute camp workout of the year, and so we did the 12 lifts of glute mass with two S's, glute mass, to grow
Yeah.
your glutes. Yeah, I was really proud of myself for that. But it was just a work. It was a hard workout. Right, I
Yeah.
put it together. It was a challenging workout. It was designed. It was hard, um, and there were 13 of you in there doing it. But you didn't. If I just said go in and do a 12 lifts of glute mass workout, you guys could go in and you could probably get a lower body workout in.
Yeah.
But that's very different for when you come in and I say this is where we're going, and then
Mhm.
I can guide you as you're going through it. Like, hey, form wise, try this. Your John was there and he had stitches on his back, so he's like, what do I do instead of this exercise? I can swap it for that
Mhm.
exercise. You have a coach who knows the path and knows where we're trying to go and can take you there. But it also would have been a lot harder if it was just you and me.
Mhm. It
And I
would have
was
been
just
a
like,
lot harder. I'm very glad it wasn't just you and me.
yeah. And I was just like, all right, Amy, do it.
No.
Now,
No.
that doesn't mean that one-on-one is invaluable and one-on-one training or coaching or whatever. But there's something to when you're doing something hard, having other people to look at and be like, this is freaking hard.
Yep.
And I'm not alone in the hard here.
It's that camaraderie. It's the battlefield camaraderie kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
that is so necessary. Because I'll complain to you about your workouts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold back.
Yep.
But it is really nice to have someone who's going through it with me, who knows the pain that, like the physical pain that my body is going through while doing this. It's really nice to look over at somebody and just be like, yeah, I know. Or like when they put their weights down to cheer them on because they
Mm-hmm.
just survived that.
Yeah.
It's great. You need it.
100%. So I took a bar class on Tuesday for the very first time ever. I've been getting nagged by Mackenzie, who teaches bar, who comes to glute camp for as long as I've known her, 4.5
Mm-hmm.
years, to come to a bar class. And I'm like, I'm not going to a bar class because I knew it was going to be painful and hard. It's like, I don't
That's
want
a
to do it.
very hard workout.
It's a very hard, it's a
It's a
challenging workout.
very
And
hard
I was
workout.
like, I just
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a desire to put myself through it.
Yeah.
And also, and this is, a little bit of a weird thing, and it happened. And I was a little bit like, oh, is this going to happen? Maybe this is just in my head. No, it happened. Like I didn't even walk into the room yet. And 8 people who knew me made this face. Like, oh my gosh, are you coming? And
Yeah.
everybody was like, looking at me, laughing at me. Chris Clifford, who does some of the social media stuff, came over and took a video of just me for like a full 2 minutes, just capturing how much pain I was like. It was gonna
You know,
be a
she's
little
not
bit
gonna.
of attention
Yeah,
about
she's not gonna
around
do anything with that video. It was more just to
for
mess
her.
with you in
For
the
her.
moment.
Yeah, for her. She's gonna send it to me in like an opportunity where I'm complaining about something, and she's just gonna be like, "Hey,
Yeah,
I have this. Like,
yeah.
I can put this on the internet." Um, but it was like there was gonna be a little bit of like I wasn't gonna be able to fly totally under the radar by doing it. I knew
No.
Ken's was gonna give me a hard time. I knew that other people were gonna be kind of watching to see how I handled it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with Megan. So that was the real thing. I went with Megan. She hadn't been able to work out in like a week and a half, and she wanted to go, and I was like, I'm gonna just. I'll go with you. It was the Christmas one. There was champagne afterward, which was a little bit of the enticing part for me. Um, but went and did bar. But there was something too, even in a new experience. One, having a coach. So like the idea that I'm going to do a bar class by myself, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I wouldn't know how to put it together. So like Ken's told me what to do. And I just did it, right? I she knew where we were going and when it was time to push and when it was time to rest, and I could just trust that she knew that my body could kind of handle it to some degree. But there was also like I could look around the room, and I was not the only person making a face that was like I was constipated or trying to birth a child or something like that. Like it was the whole room is shaking and struggling and having a hard time with this at different moments. And so it was like, okay, I'm not. And then on the flip side of it, when we finished, it was like, all right, like good, go us, like go team,
Mm-hmm.
like we made it through. Like that was hard, but we did it together. And I don't often get that in currently with the workout side of it, but it's absolutely so valuable to have it in the fitness side of things. I experience this more on the business side of things, and so I'll make that analogy there in a little bit. But I want to start here with the community piece of this, because we talked about back in the strength training episode about how boot camps and hit classes and these types of things are not necessarily the same thing as strength training. So like how do you find community but also be doing what it is that you're looking to do, right? That's a little bit of the challenge. And because you want to be doing the mechanics correctly, but you like in terms of the things that you need to do for fat loss, like you need to be doing strength training and not just working out with weights, though it's a good thing to work out with weights. But like we got to find a way to do strength training. And so how do we get that there? And so there's a couple things here, but I want to start with people underestimate, I think, the value of naturally occurring community
Mm-hmm.
that comes from being around people regularly.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is this. You think about the people that you spend the most time with in your life. Your family might not actually be up there. Like if you work a 9 to 5, like you might spend more time with your work colleagues
Mm-hmm.
than you do with your immediate family, even, but certainly than your extended family. I thought about this with the people who come to my Tuesday and Thursday morning 6 a.m. class, who come regularly, and we do strength training within that. And so you can find it in the context of like you can find group classes that can do strength training to some degree pretty well. They're a little bit harder to find, but it's not impossible. Um, we see each other twice a week for an hour, basically every week of the year. You know, miss a little bit here and there, but that's 104 hours. Take out 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. 90 hours that we're going to see each other. I don't think I cumulatively see some of my best friends in the world for 90 hours in a few, like, how often do you get together with some of these, your relatives? It's like, okay, we'll get together 2, 3 times a year for a few
Exactly.
hours. Like, there's not a lot of people that you see regularly and go through something with. And so this is, I posted about this when it happened, but it was just so cool. So this community has been built. The 6 a.m. community for me has been built over the course of 4.5 years.
Mm.
And a couple, a husband and wife come, and they're fantastic. Love them, Chris and Wendy. Shout out Chris and Wendy. They bought a place like 3 years ago in downtown Portsmouth, and they've been renovating it for literally 3 years. It's like it was a abandoned building
Mm-hmm.
they had to basically strip down completely. It's the last remaining all wooden structure in Portsmouth. They had all kinds of red tape to go through with the city and fire codes and
Mm-hmm.
cranes with beams, and it was just nuts that they did this thing. But they've been renovating this thing, and it finally they moved in. They're living there now, and so they like the second party that they threw there, the second get together. Now they're in their 50s, their kids are all out of the house, and so they have the ability to have social gatherings now. But
Yeah.
the second party that they threw there, their house is really kind of set up for this. It's in downtown Portsmouth. Was for the gym. Was
Mm-hmm.
for the 6 a.m. group that comes, and everybody showed up. I'm like, there are 18 to 20 people who come to that class. Almost every single person, aside from like situations where people like actually could not, came and brought their significant others. There were 35 people at this thing, and we're just enjoying, like, we're genuine friendships
Mm-hmm.
have been built over the course of 3 years of doing this together. And I looked forward to going to that more than I think, and Megan did too, coming with me. And she doesn't go to those classes, but she was like, that was so cool. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't have that with my work colleagues, and she loves her work colleagues, but like, you don't
Yeah.
have that same level of connection in that space because you go through something. And it was so fun for me to be there, to be invited and to be part of it. Right. It's a little bit like, is the teacher going to come? Am I going to ruin all the fun or whatever? I was like, listen, pour me a margarita. Like, we're having a good time here. And they poured me a heavy one. Let's just, I was seeing a couple of things. I was like, I think we need to hang out for a minute because there was a lot of alcohol in that. And they kept on pouring in. I was like, stop. I can't handle it. But it was so fun for me to see that that's been a community that's been established there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not unique. It's not incredibly common to find something that to that level, but it's not unique to
No.
see a gym community. There are other communities even within our gym because it's oftentimes pockets of time that people go to.
Yeah.
So the one that
Yeah.
you experience is your body combat community,
Right.
particularly
My
on Saturday
8 a.m.
mornings.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that community and that experience that you've had?
Oh, of course. So I have, I'd say, 4 other women that we do most classes together, but we met during the body combat class, which is an 8 a.m. Saturday morning, which you have to kind of commit to an early weekend class
Yeah.
because Friday nights is often a night to go out and see friends and blah blah. But really, we can't do that on Friday nights if you want to get up and do
Mm-hmm.
this level of a cardio class at
Mm-hmm.
8 a.m. the next day. So like all of us are kind of in the same phase of life, and we all have
Quick pin in
kids.
that, just real quick. I don't want to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but that's a really interesting piece of it, and just a subtle piece of accountability, which is I'm going to make different choices on Friday night because I know that I want to go do this thing the next day.
Yes.
There's something to that where it impacts not just the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely gone to combat after a night of like if we've gone out to dinner and
Yeah.
had a heavy meal. Like
Yeah.
you can't
Mm-hmm.
perform the same the next
Mm-hmm.
day. But these women and I, this is where I met them all, was in Saturday morning combat. I didn't do any other classes. That was the one that I went to, and
Mm-hmm.
then I would like go to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
where you just go and you like kind of sort of like throw some weights around or like walk on the treadmill, and then you're like, ooh, tough workout, and then you go home.
Yeah.
But that was 4 years ago. But since meeting these women and seeing all the other things that are on offer at our phenomenal gym, like for the price, it's unreal what we get to do.
Yeah, it
But I
is.
started joining in. So now I go to different classes 5 days a week with the
Mm-hmm.
same group of women. And we don't just hang out at the gym. One of these women is I fondly refer to as my wife, and my
Mm-hmm.
husband is fine with that because
Yeah.
he refers to this woman's husband as his husband. So
Mm-hmm.
they go mountain biking together, they go camping together. Um, I have my group. We go out to dinner once a month.
Mm-hmm.
We all get together. We'll go to either one of our houses or we'll go out, and it's become such a tight community that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not the accountability and that anyone's going to get mad at you if you don't show up. It's the
No.
accountability that if you don't show up, you have 6 texts waiting on your phone when you do wake up. Be like, are you okay? Do you need me to bring anything over? Are you sick? Do you need soup? What can I do? It's that kind of accountability. And these are the people that, like, you don't, like you were saying about the Kelseys and their teammates, you don't want to let them down.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like if you don't show up, you're going to let them down, not because they're disappointed in you, but that you miss out on a little bit of that time together. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
special. I love these ladies.
Yeah. No, and they're fantastic. But I love what you said there about accountability, which is that it's not that you're going to let them down; it's that you want to go do it,
Yeah.
and
I
it's a
want to be
safe
with them.
place. It's a safe place
Mm-hmm.
for you to be where you're at with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but even if you're not doing a structured class, okay, there are people. So, like just recently, so I'll share this experience. I have been having a hard time with my own training, being consistent and pushing myself because I've been doing it for a long time. It's to some degree part of my job to train. Not
Mm-hmm.
really, right? Like I do have to take care of my like I have to carve it out. It'd be very easy for me to not. Um, but I had a workout buddy. It was one of my best friends. He lived 2 minutes down the road, and we would wake up and we would work out in my basement in when I lived in Newmarket at 5 a.m. all the time, like when we lived together. And then COVID, and they moved, and we had kids, and now they live in Dover, and we live in Exeter, and I don't get to work out with them anymore. But we had that. We had that peer level, like we're in it together. We're gonna push each other, right? Like I don't feel up for it today, but he's going for it. I'm gonna try to keep up and vice versa. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean this to sound arrogant because it's not, but it's just the
Yeah.
stage of training that I'm in. One, there's like goals that I have that are not maybe the same as other people
Mm-hmm.
who are at different stages of their training career, because my goal, I don't have what would be considered a typical training goal. My training, I don't have a body composition goal really. Like at this point I'm probably not going to put on a ton more muscle, and I don't really care to. Like if I do, great,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm not going to be a bodybuilder. I'm not really trying to like lose a lot of fat. Like every now and then I go into that, but that doesn't really be impacted by my training. I'm not trying to currently not trying to like train for any sort of athletic performance or anything like, oh, I want to run a Spartan race or anything like that. I'm not powerlifting. I don't have a specific goal. My goal is just I want to look good, feel good, be able to play with my kids. It's an odd, nebulous goal. And for right now, it works for me, but that also informs my training because I don't care to back squat anymore, because in order for me to back squat at a heavy enough weight to like make it challenging for my legs, I would have to put more weight on my back than I would like to. And so I have to, if I was going to find somebody who wanted to work out with me, they would, this is going to sound super arrogant, but they need to some degree to be able to keep up with me, because I've done it long enough that like, okay, I don't want to have to like necessarily train you in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can give you, I'll give you tips, I'll write the workout, whatever it is, but I'm not here to like watch your every thing. I'm here to get my workout in,
Mm-hmm.
and also have to be okay with the fact that I'm gonna not do a lot of things that other people might want to do depending on where they are in their training career. Like I don't care how much weight I lift, so I put like my heaviest exercises 2/3 of the way through the workout when I'm already a little bit tired, so that I don't need to use as much weight to make it hard for me.
Hmm.
That's not how, if you listen back to my strength training podcast and how to structure a workout, that's not how most people should do it. You should,
Yeah.
like on paper, you should do your hardest work exercises at the beginning. That's how we do it in glute
Right.
camp. You do your heavy stuff at the beginning of the workout when you're not fatigued. I do it later in the workout, so I'm intentionally fatigued because I have a different goal and I'm in a different place in my training career. So for me to find somebody who's kind of on that peer level where we can go through it together was hard to try to
Hmm.
find. And I had a coach, and I still have a coach. And so I have that role, but I was still having a hard time really kind of pushing myself, even though he was like, this is exactly what to do. And I had some accountability there. The peer piece was hard. And I'll talk more about coaching here in a second. The peer piece was hard for me because there's days I'm like, I can't get myself up to do this today. Like, I'm here, I'm going through the motions, but I'm like, I don't really want to do this. And
Yeah.
there's something to having somebody else when you don't feel like it, but they're feeling up for it, that they're going to kind of push you to do maybe more than you thought you could. And so the community at the gym, where this all comes down to, there's a guy who, it's weird because I work at the gym, and so I just, people know me, and I'll like have conversations with people if I see them. Some of them, unfortunately, I've forgotten their name, because they introduced themselves to, we introduced ourselves 3 years ago, and then I forgot it, and now it's 3 years later, and I've said hi to them twice a week for 3 years, and I don't know their names. So now they're Buckaroo, you know. Hi, how you doing, Buckaroo? Like, what's up, my guy? Like,
My guy. What's up, dude?
that's where it's is, and because
Hello.
I can't ask now, like I just can't do it. But there, some of them I've gotten to know, and I'm like, I know a little bit of their story, hey, kids, and what you do for work and whatever. You just have that conversation because you're around them, and you're like in between sets, and you're like, oh, hey, like it's just easy enough to have the conversation. And so I asked just one of these guys who I'd seen forever, who I know he's got a 9-month old or something like that, and he's been training for a while, and I've seen him train. I'm like, he could, we're not quite exactly in the same spot, but he can, kind of do he knows what he's doing,
Hmm.
and he's going to have somewhat similar goals to me. Like, I don't think he's out there trying to get huge or whatever, just wants to be strong, confident, feel good. And so I was like, hey man, like, would you be up for, like, trying to get some workouts in together? Because he's in there when I would normally work out, and he's like, yeah, dude, I'd love that. Like, that would be great. And so for the last 3-4 weeks now, we haven't gotten a lot of workouts in together. Of the 3 workouts we're trying to do a week, I think we've done so we've had probably 12 possible workouts we could have done together. I think we've done 5, maybe 6,
Hmm.
because of scheduling stuff and whatever. But there's something to the accountability piece of, like, I'm going to see him again, the next time. So I got to do my workout this time so I can make sure that I'm good to go for next time.
Hmm.
So there's something to having, or even if it's not like, okay, we're doing this workout together, you see somebody at the gym, and you see them regularly. And it's like, hey, we're going to both be here at 5 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like, after a little bit, you develop that community. Like, the gym community is unique. And I think
Hmm.
oftentimes people think that it's daunting, especially when you're first starting out, that everybody's looking at you, or they think little of you, or
Yeah.
whatever. And nothing could be further from the truth. Like, I have
No.
people who come to classes with me, and it's their very first time in class, and they'll apologize because they don't know the exercise. I'm like, why would you know the exercise? Like, you've never been here. Like,
Hmm.
there's no need to apologize. It's literally my job to help you with this. Like, you don't need to apologize. Like, you're here to get better. And everybody who's been in the gym for an extended period of time remembers, unless they're like, there's 2% of people, but these are 2% of people that you find anywhere who are just a-holes, who, are going to be that way. But generally, all that people are thinking when they see somebody new at the gym is, oh, I wonder who that is. I haven't seen
Hmm.
that before. If they see you, you're new, and maybe you're not quite in the shape that you want to be in yet, all that they're thinking is, good for them. I hope they keep
Good
coming
for them.
back. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, we all remember that, the time where it was like, it was hard. And so just keep, like, those are the people. And so if you are currently going to the gym, I'm going to encourage you to go to that person and just introduce yourself. It's a really, hey, you haven't seen you before. My name's whatever. Just want to say hi. Don't have to like engage them in conversation. Get the like, just want to say hi. Just in case we see each other, hear some more. You could potentially keep somebody coming back that might not have done it before. And if you are new, know that nobody really cares. People are there to
No.
kind of do their own thing. Like you're not really
Mhm.
paying all that close of attention to other people's stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
just you're there, you do your thing, and just keep coming back. But it is finding an intentional community and
Mhm.
introducing yourself can keep you coming back. And so in that sense, going to a class or two in some context can be great. And I will say a lot of things maybe that I don't love about, for instance, CrossFit in terms of like whether or not it's the right, fit for most people, general population. But CrossFit does something across the board better than anybody, including
Yes.
our gym. CrossFit does community better than anybody. And there's a reason why
100%.
it's so big. And even
Mhm.
though people probably hate the workouts and get hurt all the time doing
Mhm.
CrossFit workouts, they keep going back because of the community.
Mhm.
So if you have that support, there's something to um, being able to continue to come back because it's
Yeah.
the just keeps it's the sustainability piece. You got to just keep showing up at the gym.
Mhm. The reason I go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week is because 3 or 4 years ago, one girl turned around and said, "Hey, you're new. What's your name?" And that was Heather, who's now my gym wife.
Mm-hmm,
And we go, she's now Emerson's auntie. Like,
mm-hmm.
just that one action of turning around and saying hello to someone and making the connection goes so far.
You can literally change somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not overstating it by
I can't tell
just
if she
saying
changed it
hello.
for the better based on how my butt feels today.
Well, I mean, you look around at how it looks, and you're gonna be like, you know what,
It's
change it
pretty
for the
great.
better.
It's pretty great. But I did
Yeah.
wear an elf costume today. You missed it because you
Ugh,
weren't at the gym this morning. But
I was not at the gym this morning.
yeah,
I
I
went
was
for a
dressed as an
walk this
elf,
morning
and
and listened to the
John was
Jason
dressed
and
as
Travis
Santa.
Kelsey.
Oh, the Kelsey boys.
Yeah, I listened to the Kelsey Boys podcast and went for a walk in the freezing cold. That was what
That
I did
sounds
today.
nice, though.
It was good. It was a good time. Um, yes, so it is not a small thing to do that. Now, that is not to say that if you work out at home, because there's a ton of convenience to working out at home, particularly if you're a stay-at-home parent or whatever it is, the barrier again, we talk about lowering the barrier to entry, like working out at
Yeah.
home is huge for that.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean, however, that you cannot still get a community. And so this is where I'll give you for instance, former client of mine, which this is my favorite thing. Like Amy is not like when she comes to the gym, but like is not currently an online client of mine.
Right.
And so it's one of my favorite things to have like people who aren't necessarily still like paying me to be their coach, but are like I still have a vested interest in their life and hear about what's going on, and it's fantastic for me. So former client, I don't know if she's listening. Shout out Laura. Um, uh, we were chatting about it, and she's like, I just wanted to get into some running more. I wanted to do a little bit more cardio. And I was like, great,
Mm-hmm.
good for you. And she's like, it's cold, don't want to do it outside, so we'll do it. I have a couple of girlfriends, and we'll just get on Zoom in the morning and we'll all do our cardio. And we sometimes we're chatting, sometimes we're just listening to our own music, but it's just the computer's open. There's a little bit of community there where it's just like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're in this together. We're just talking about it. It doesn't mean that you have to like, hey, are you doing your workout today? Like that's not accountability. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, hey, how's it going? Ask a question. That's what accountability looks like. So if you're looking for somebody who's going to keep you accountable, you do not need somebody who is going to pepper you. You need
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's going to check in with you,
Yeah.
ask the questions. So understand the people in your life and what their MO is and how they relate to you. Somebody who's going to be a good support system for you. It's one of the questions that I ask all the time. And now I think I don't know if I've told this story before. I don't know if I want to go there, but when I have a call with somebody, one of the questions that I ask is like, what is your support system like? Like, who is your biggest fan in this? Because that's a big part. Like if they're like, my husband doesn't get this, my wife is just frustrated with me. Like, she's over it. He just only eats fast food. Like, I understand it's not impossible, but the battle's a little bit uphill. So we got to find more support for you that's going to make the environment more helpful
Mm-hmm.
versus they're like, oh, my wife is fantastic. Like, she tells me to go to the gym. Like, she wants this for me. Like, that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
My best friend and I, we talk, about this stuff, whatever it is. What is that person like? Are they a curious person or are they a judgmental person? Oh, that's a Ted Lasso moment, right? Be curious, not judgmental. That's what it's look.
Oh,
What a
I love
good,
that scene.
what a good connection. 10 points to me for remembering the Ted Lasso quote.
So real.
Um, be curious, not judgmental. That's what accountability looks like. Be curious, not judgmental. That's also what a good coach looks like. So I'm going to tell you something. As a coach, I don't, whether you work with me or not, I know a gajillion good coaches. But the reason why they're good coaches is not because they make you feel like crap because you're not doing what you ought to be doing. You already feel like crap if you don't do what you ought to be doing. It's not my
Mm-hmm.
job to beat you up for doing it. You're already doing it yourself.
Yes.
My job is to be curious as to why it happened,
Yep.
and then for us together to figure out what we can do going forward. Because you've already you messed up. This
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that, so I was around a bunch of different football coaches. This is going back to the coach example. And the head coach that I worked under at Goffstown before I left, his name was Justin Huff. He's a fantastic coach. And he basically never yelled, right? Very stereotypical football coach is to like yell. And like my high school football coach was a great coach, scared the pants off me, like nearly wet myself multiple times, where he like got in my face and like screamed at me for sometimes even when I didn't do anything wrong. Like he like, but he didn't apologize afterward. Like that was just like, do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the judgmental thing. Like, do it the way that I say. You know what I mean? People didn't
Yes.
necessarily want to like. I remember vividly. My sophomore year of high school was his last one of his last games. It was a playoff game. Halftime, we're getting creamed, and he comes over at halftime of the potentially the last game of the year, right? And just rips into everybody about like what we're not doing right.
Mm-hmm.
And the captain of the team, wicked intense football guy, linebacker, I still remember Matt Browning. Um, just gets all pissed off, right? And he's just like walking around. He's like, fine, you don't want to do it. You don't want to help us. We'll do it ourselves. Because that was the idea of like, it wasn't problem solving. It rebelled against it. Like you're not here to help me. You're just demanding something of me. So versus Coach Huft, like almost never yelled. And he was straight with everybody. He's like, listen, look, there was a couple games that we're losing. He's like, listen, guys, this is about us. Like we're not doing what we ought to do, but what do we see?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? Like, we're going to try this and we're going to see if it works. I don't know if it's going to.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have the ability to do it, but we got to do what we're capable of doing. And kids would run through a wall for him.
Mm-hmm.
The end of season banquet speeches were dramatically different from the
Mm-hmm.
seniors saying goodbye to my high school coach versus the seniors saying goodbye to Coach Huft. Guys came back to talk to Coach Huft
Mm-hmm.
because he like understood them where they were at and said, all right, what are we going to do about this forward?
Mm-hmm.
Tried to come up with a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Be curious, not judgmental. So if you have a coach where you feel judged for your failures, it's not likely going to be helpful for you. You might need
Mm-hmm.
somebody to maybe light a fire under your butt on occasion and tell you the truth. You don't want somebody who's just going to blow smoke up your butt.
Mm-hmm.
You need somebody who's going to tell you the truth and be like, "Hey, you said that you wanted this,
Mm-hmm.
but your actions aren't matching this. Like, what what gives, like what are we going to do about
Yeah.
this? But that's still
Yeah.
a curious question versus like,
It's still curious. It's still looking for why and how can I help?
so if you've had a poor experience with a coach, one, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Two, that doesn't mean that that's how they all are. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of wrap with this and then go to what the next stages are. So for me, this is, I still have a fitness coach and I still have this in there. But for me, most of this, as I've said before, most of these analogies for me are within business because this all applies to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I had multiple coaches in my business prior to the ones that I currently have. And it wasn't that those guys, the first one was not good. First one was like, this is what you need to do. And if you're not doing it, you suck. The second one was a little bit better, but it was just not quite the right fit. And the most recent one has been where it's been a game changer for me. But part of the most recent one that's been the game changer has been the community of people that I've developed relationships with throughout the way. This is why I traveled to Edmonton, Ontario, and why I went to Seattle and why I went to Dallas and why I go to these things and what's going to be coming up on here is I'm going to be having some of these other coaches that I've met along the way on this podcast because talking with them we can celebrate the wins and we can also commiserate with the difficulties even on little things because they're in it with me. But we also need somebody who's been there, who knows, like if we're just all trying to figure it out together, we're all going to make the same mistakes. We need somebody who's like, this is kind of the way you ought to be going, but
Mm-hmm.
navigate it for yourself. But understand that this is the general path. You still have to climb Mount Everest by yourself. Everybody's going to take a little bit of their own path. You're not all going to footprints in the same footprint for the whole thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not going to happen. There might be parts where you do,
Yeah.
but there also can be parts where you don't. And so you have to navigate your own path, but you're also going to have other people who are navigating similar paths to you that are kind of guided by the coach who knows the way to get there. You're going to not go places where you're afraid that it could be a problem, and you're going to go places where you think that this is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two components for the support piece. You need peers accountability and you need a coach or a Sherpa guide to lead you. But this is the final step, and this is kind of where I'll end with because I had this conversation yesterday with another coach of mine, and this has been a wild thing for me because I did this presentation a couple of weeks ago for the thing, which was again wild for me because for me I feel really young in the industry. But I also got asked. I went to coffee the other day or yesterday with um, another coach who is kind of trying to figure it out, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just like kind of getting frustrated with where he is. And I'm a little bit further along the mountain than him, not
Mm-hmm.
at the top, but I'm a little bit further along the mountain than him. And so this is where Heather was for you,
Mm-hmm.
and you can be for others, which is wherever you are, you can be the encouragement, the maybe not the full Sherpa, but at least somebody out in front to kind of help guide along. The seniors on the football team were the leaders among the sophomores.
Mm-hmm.
They set the standard and they said, come with me as I go do this. As I try to do what the coach is telling me to do, come with me and I can commiserate with you, maybe even more than the coach can because I'm closer to it than you and I'm still on the journey. But we can kind of figure this out together. But that's the ultimate goal of the journey is that you can turn around and be that for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Pay it forward and all that.
Mm-hmm. So as you're thinking about trying to do the building blocks of fat loss or any part of your fitness journey, you want to think about those three components.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can use a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. I've been doing it for years, and I have a coach. I have multiple coaches that I've done and tried and interacted with, because you learn something and you have somebody pulling you along, guiding you. Hey, at this point in the journey, there's new things to navigate. You also need people who are in it with you, who can experience the highs and the lows with you. And then at some point, you can turn around and be that for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're starting this, think about, what's my support system look like? And if you need help navigating that, I'd love to chat with you. You can send me a message on Instagram at Jeff Delzell Fitness. Would love to hear from you and kind of help you, whether it's help you find a gym community. I can look around and talk to other coaches that I know all around the world, which is wild to say, like see if I can maybe find something near you. But or even just to have a coach and maybe point you, whether it's me or somebody else, point you to the right direction, so you have
Mm-hmm.
somebody to kind of be that guide for you, because it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it really does.
So appreciate you all listening. And we'll be back with, I think the next episode that comes is going to be with my client, Ashley. I think that,
Nice.
no, that one might be pushed a little. We'll see. I don't know when this is going to come out. I have to kind of get my head around the timeline of this, but one of them will be there. Some other coaches are going to be coming on, but the next one with me and Amy will be about stress management, which is the second S in the sustainable fat loss plan. So exciting stuff, gang. Have yourselves a
Yes.
wonderful few days, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.